My next guest, Jamie Gane, is a right below the knee amputee and defines what a high functioning adaptive athlete is all about. Jamie competes in multiple disciplines, including Tough Mudder, Para-Spartan, Judo, Paraskiing, and provides motivational speaking to people all over the world. It is my honor to introduce Jamie Gane. Welcome, everyone. My name is Rick Bontkowski, and this is the AMP'D UP211 Podcast. How you doing, Jamie? Great to see you today.
I'm good, thanks. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent, my friend. And I have to do a little backstory before we dive into this interview. You know, I became an amputee in 2016, like yourself. And, you know, I had a bit of a struggle when I began my particular journey. And you were actually the very first amputee I began following. You
Oh, wow.
are number one.
Awesome.
And I know this is a little surreal for me this moment because you were actually the first guest I reached out to get on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long we've been communicating. It's been a while.
It has been a while, certainly.
It's been a few months. And I think at one point you were so kind. I mean, you just said, I appreciate you chasing. Like keep chasing me. It's okay. I'm not ghosting you. I'm not telling you to leave me alone. Just stay on your path. I know we're gonna cross at some point, you know?
Yeah. And alas, here we are.
I know, and here we are. And you know, it was, for me anyway, finding sources of inspiration when I started, you know, my particular journey was really the beacon. It was the lighthouse for me that kept me going. So when I sort of tapped into your story in particular and watching you go through what you did to become an amputee, and then how you transitioned so quickly, and I know you had some struggles in there as well, but that you really were on a fast track to doing some amazing things. And I think one of the sources of inspiration for me, with you in particular, not only what you were doing, but the way in which you were sort of presenting yourself. And you would not, and maybe you've heard this from people, for me, seeing you smiling, seeing you active, seeing you doing things in these particular spaces that you were, it was like a huge motivation for me. Like, here is someone that has gone through so much, and you can't get the grin off of this guy's face. Like he's just doing it. I mean, he's doing it, and he's doing it in a way that I want to do it, you know, in a way that I want to feel like that person. I want to feel like that, how that person looks right now. And that was just such a big thing for me. You know, I sort of gravitated towards the Tough Mudder stuff that you were doing. And for the listeners that don't know, you know, about Tough Mudder, you know, calling it, you know, an obstacle course is very much an understatement. Can you kind of explain in a more detailed way, you know, what Tough Mudder is all about, and then what brought you to that particular discipline?
Yeah, absolutely. So a Tough Mudder, as it was back then, it's changed slightly now. So it was a 10 to 12 mile obstacle race, race in the very loose sense of the word. And the community really of obstacle racing is quite small. It's quite niche, but it is a real community. And that was really what drawn me to it. So when you talk about an obstacle race, we could talk about any kind of obstacle. So anything from a 10-foot wall to get over, to a 40-foot sort of bridge to jump off into water, to ice cold baths, you know, literally a skip full of water. Then they're throwing in ice cubes. And while it's really nice and sunny right now, and I'd love that, as you can imagine, like, 17 degrees Celsius weather in ice cold baths, not particularly nice. And then other different things with monkey bars over water with all sorts of rings and rigs. And when I first started looking at amputation, because mine was elective, I knew that I needed to get fit, I needed to get healthy, and I needed to be in a good place physically where I could undergo an amputation and be able to go through all the rehabilitation.
Right.
So I started looking at powerlifting. I got quite strong. And then my friend said, "Hey, do you want to do this Tough Mudder thing?" And I did one, and that was it. I was just
You were hooked.
absolutely addicted. Yeah, completely. And you're just like waiting in the queue, waiting to go into the warm up area, and you start chatting to people. And every time you do one, you get a headband, and the first one is orange, and then you see all these people with 10 headband and 25 headband, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
wait, when can I get that?
We call that
Just
positive peer pressure. It's the peer pressure that makes really, really great things happen,
Yeah,
And when I've
definitely.
seen
Good
you,
marketing.
when I've seen you in these competitions, I mean, this is some pretty badass stuff going on. I mean, this is not this. I mean, when you talk about the elements, and when I first sort of tapped into that energy, um, I watched you kind of go through this spectrum of, I think initially you were just on a crutch. You were,
Yeah,
it
that's right.
was like
My first couple were in a wheelchair,
okay.
and it was taking me like 8 hours to do it. And
Oh
then
man.
I started on a hands-free crutch, and then
Right.
onto crutches, and then onto walking. Yeah.
Right. Right. So to go through that spectrum of development with that particular type of competition, I mean, can you describe like how gratifying that is? And when you look back, appreciating your fitness level now, probably as much as you do, given everything you've gone through. And I'm sure, I mean, you can answer this. Would you change any of it?
I don't think I'd change anything, to be
Yeah.
honest, because when it was 8 hours in a wheelchair on my own, pushing myself up the hills, and on my hands and knees, pushing my wheelchair up the wall, up the cliffside, that was actually incredible training at the
Hmm.
time. And there's often moments where I go and do an obstacle race now, like a 10-mile obstacle race, and it will take me an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's me kind of going for it. And I think if when I'm in those moments thinking, can I actually get to the end of this? I'm like, hell yeah, I did this 8 hour one. Yeah, okay, it was much slower, and the obstacles were the relief, and the walking in between was really hard. But actually, if I got through all of that, actually all this other stuff, even though it's at a higher and more kind of elite level, actually in some respects those earlier races were quite difficult, and I didn't really fully appreciate when I was going through them just how challenging they were. It was just like, I'm just going to get to the end, and that was it. And I just had in my mind that I'm just going to finish it however long it takes. And a couple of races I had the guy in the cart behind me going, "You're the last guy, come on," and I thought, if I can do that, I can do anything.
I mean, I think, the part of what you just said that really resonates for me is it's that idea of completing, getting to the end. And
Mm.
that I think is it's such a lesson for amputees and anyone who has any level of disability that we're not all gonna, come in first place, but
No.
at the same time, there is such a beauty in saying, I finished, like I got
Yeah.
through it. And
Yeah.
I think I picked up on that energy, and seeing you go through that, it's just had a huge benefit to myself. And there was one particular, and I'm trying to remember the fella's name, Jeshu. Am I saying that
Oh
right?
yeah, just you.
Okay.
Yeah, just you. Yeah.
So there was this piece that I saw on video where you were already at that point walking, and you were trying to essentially do some recruitment, and you
Yeah.
were bringing others into this space again, which is something I so admire about you, is to say, okay, well, I've reached this level, And you're looking around going, who else can I bring into this space with me? How can I share this energy? And Jeshu comes in, never done anything like this before. Okay. He's wheelchair bound, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And tell me about what that represented. I mean, you could tell, what that represented for him. Talk about just the joy that he was experiencing going through that. Tell me a little bit about what that looked like through your lens. Hey amputees, I'd like to take a moment to introduce everyone to the liner wand. We all know how bacteria and odor can be a major issue with prosthetic liners, and the liner wand is the solution. Did you know that if you're using soap and water, you may be making the problem worse? The liner wand uses a patented formula that deletes all bacteria and smells for 2 weeks. The liner wand is available as an affordable subscription or individually, and it always ships for free. To learn more, visit thelinerwand.com. That's THELINERWAND.com. Use code 211, that's 211, and receive 50% off your first subscription today. You can also use the code RICK, RICK, and receive 25% off your cleanser subscription as well. That's thelinerwand.com. The joy that he was experiencing going through that. Tell me a little bit about what that looked like through your lens.
I think that is something that will kind of stay with me for my whole life, as to how incredible that experience was.
Yeah.
And what it really showed me is, I allowed him this opportunity, and the wheelchair that he was using was my own wheelchair that I lent him for the day.
Yeah.
And there's little moments like teaching him how it worked, because the steering mechanism was different to a standard wheelchair, or really those early stages of, well, what should I wear? What should I bring with me? What do I need to eat the day before? And that whole process was just so enjoyable, and it actually brought me back to the first one that I did, where I had those thoughts. And I was thinking, when I was having those thoughts and when I was going through what he's going through, actually, I didn't have anybody there for me. I didn't have anybody to motivate me to go, you know what? Come on, let's give it a go, and I'll help you and I'll hold your hand. So I think I wanted to give him an opportunity to do that, or anybody. And it was just so happened that he kind of came forward. But I think it kind of just really resonated with how important it is for me to give back to the community, because I didn't have anybody at all, or I didn't feel like I did. And amputation, because it was elective, and because for various reasons, I was kicked out of home when I was 16, so my parents weren't on board for my amputation, my friends weren't on board. My partner was really supportive, but I didn't have anybody else in my corner. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And it just was an amazing experience. I've continued to show other adaptive athletes around the course. And I think the special thing about Tough Mudder, or obstacle racing in general, is, one, the community that I kind of talked about earlier is just amazing. And the amount of people who came in and helped and pushed him for 100 meters or so and then left, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
So it was partly that, and also the fact that if you come in last, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just about finishing. It's about doing whatever you can do to the best of your ability, and making sure that everything is in place so that you on that day are ready to go. Mentally, physically, everything's ready to go.
Yeah, and again, pounding away on that, just finishing. It's not about where you place. It's about the community. It's about sharing that energy. Because when I watch that video, I'm like, oh my gosh! It's just such a celebration of like humanity and everyone just helping each other. Because let's face it, man, if we just helped each other, the world would be a much better place,
Yeah,
If we just
it certainly would be.
right, just reach out once in a while. You talked a little bit, about your own support systems. Obviously, I've read up, following you as long as I have. I very much know about your story. You're 9 years old. you're, at Disney World, you start experiencing, these symptoms of pain. You get diagnosed with plantar fasciitis, which then leads to what seemed like a very complex nerve disorder as well.
Yeah.
And you fought, man. I mean, you fought at a very young age to have amputation. I mean, I was not
Yeah.
aware of, that particular set of hurdles that
Yeah.
go on. And because obviously I don't know, because my amputation was not elective.
Sure.
It was more of a, this has got to go or you're going to die kind of situation. So,
Yeah.
can you explain to me the complexities of that journey, which I think was around 6 years? Do I have that right? You
Yeah. So
were,
it was 6 years fighting for
yeah,
amputation. Yeah.
6 years fighting for amputation. Can you kind of walk the audience through that particular process in a little bit more detail? That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was about 16 at the time, and I'd already had 25 operations to solve this chronic pain. They didn't really know exactly what it was at that stage. And it just so happened that I went to a doctor's appointment and I was at the end of my tether. 16 here in the UK is when you do your big exams, and then you do and the next set at 18, and then you go off to university, potentially. And I just finished, or was just about to finish, those exams. And every single Christmas holiday, every Easter holiday, every summer holiday, I was in hospital. Every half term, I was in hospital. After school physio. I was just fed up, if I'm honest. So I went to the doctor with a really fed up attitude, because normally I'd go in really positive and be like, what's going to happen? But I just was really down to earth with the chap, and I said, look, what are you going to do? Because I've already had 25 operations. You keep just saying to me, let's try this, let's try that. I'm just fed up. And at this stage, I'd never met another amputee. I didn't really know what it was. So he said, oh, we're going to do this surgery, this surgery, this surgery. If it doesn't work, then amputation is on the cards. And then it was almost like a little, light bulb in my head that just kind of went, wait, amputation is an option? Why are you putting me through all
Yeah,
these surgeries and all this turmoil
right.
if amputation is an option? Like, just like, let me just get rid of that thing and get a new foot, basically, that will work. And because I was only 16, he said to me, you're only 16, you don't know what you're talking about. Go and see this other doctor. So basically, I was pushed from pillar to post, where this doctor then referred me to another doctor, who referred me to another doctor, and waiting times were sometimes 3 to 6 months between appointments. And at that point, I was also working part time as well as doing my studies, so I had a pot of money, and I decided that this is just around the point where I was kicked out of home. So I was living, in various places in my car at the point where I bought a car,
Mm.
and I thought, this is what I'm going to spend my money on. So I just went from doctor to doctor, and it was literally, I went to Dr. Smith, and he said, no, I can't do it. Try Dr. White. And I went to her, and she said, no, try this place. So I was literally going around
So I just want
from
to
surgeon to
understand this. I
surgeon.
want to understand this because I think this
Yeah.
is a really, really important part of your journey.
Mm.
You're 16.
Yeah.
You are, for lack of a better phrase, you're homeless. You're
Yeah.
taking all of your resources. You're trying to work. You're in pain. Okay,
Yeah.
you're living with pain. You're taking all of your hard-earned resources as a 16-year-old, and you are trying to find a way to have your leg amputated. I mean, think
Yeah.
about that. Just that particular, I mean, if you were to put that like on a movie, like Billboard or something,
Yeah.
everyone's like, I got to see this movie. Like how,
Yeah.
like what kind of story, what is happening here, you know? And somehow you find the strength to keep going. So sorry to stop you. Just pick up right there.
No, fine. Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because people always say to me, how did you, there was so much stuff going on. How did you even get through it? And if I'm honest, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think the fact that I saw amputation as this one thing that was going to solve everything, and I appreciated the risks and the chance that it wouldn't work, and the potential for a challenging afterlife. But it was the one thing that I was focused on, and it didn't matter about anything else. That was the one thing. So eventually, I found a surgeon who was willing to amputate. And bearing in mind, I'd traveled all across the country. So this surgeon was 7 hours north of where I lived. And I was going up to see him, and he was taking his time, shall we say, because I found him privately, paying £200 an appointment. I couldn't afford to do that a lot, so I was referred through the National Health Service.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for that referral to come through. My funds I had nothing left, basically. And I was due to have an appointment with him. And just at this time, I was in the final year of my degree. And I had my undergraduate degree. So I had a job lined up for the September. And I thought, right, this is the window where I can get my amputation done. And I'd like planned it, I was like, right, if I have it on this date,
Right.
exactly 6 weeks
You're
recovery, and
like
I can
marking off
start
your
work,
calendar, every day.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I got it.
exactly. I'll go back to training here. So I found him, and he basically said to me, this wasn't in my final year. That was a bit later. This was a couple of years before that. And he said, in order to do the amputation, you have to undergo counselling for 2 years to prove that you've thought about everything. You have to see a psychiatrist to prove you're mentally stable enough. You have to go to prosthetic centres to understand prosthetics, and then once those things have been met, then I'd be willing to amputate. So when I went through this process of a couple of
And is
years of
that
all of
because
that
you're
stuff.
16? Is that because you're
This is because I am at this stage. I'm about 20.
okay? So,
So
but is
about
that
20.
protocol? Is I guess where I'm going is that just how it is for elective amputees where you live?
Um, Partly, I think it was partly because I was young
Okay.
or youngish. I think it was also because I was really honest about the fact, I've been sent here by all these other doctors who won't do it. Will you please just give me a chance? Um, because it's their medical license, isn't it? That's on hold. So once I'd undergone those 2 years, I was still waiting, and when I was in my final year of my undergraduate degree, and it was taking so long. And I thought, right, well, if he's willing to do it, I might find someone else to do it.
Yeah.
So I started looking online at anyone would amputate it across the whole world, and I found this guy in India who was willing to amputate. So I was messaging his secretary and was like, yeah, cool. This is how much it's going to cost. I started raising money. And then at the point where I was ready to book to go to India, I then sent the original surgeon who said, you have to go through these hoops. I sent him an email and said, hey, by the way, I'm just about to book in to go to India. If you don't agree to amputate it, that's fine. I'll just go to India and get it done. But can you please just have one last consideration? And he then said, I'll see you on Monday.
Okay.
And that's when he approved the amputation.
Right.
So I wonder if I hadn't have done the Indian plan, whether it would have gone ahead.
Yeah, it's funny.
But
Funny you had to use some form of leverage to say, "Hey, I'm about to get on a plane. Are you
yeah,
sure you don't want to do this?" And
yeah,
so much of the way you describe it, in terms of your resilience, your determination, and I'm sure so many people who meet you now and the way that you perform at the level that you do, uh, and see your strength, see this sort of high vibration that comes from you. All they have to do is just do a little bit of research on you and go, aha, okay, yeah, I get it. This guy,
yeah,
nothing stops this person. I mean, just nothing gets in his way. And I think for myself, like I was mentioning earlier, following you, on my own path as an amputee, I definitely was able to sort of feed off of that energy, and it gave me the ability to set goals and reach those goals and continue to set those goals, because the thing is, we're never done. We're
No.
never done. We are all a work in progress, and it's our duty to reach our fullest capacity, no matter what our situation is. And, it's funny, I was talking to my parents yesterday, and I said, it's been my dream to interview some of these people. I was even telling them about you. And I said, there are certain things that they can do that I'm not really sure that I can do. However, I know there's so many things I can do that I haven't done yet, and I'm going to do them.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
because of these people, I know I can. And as long as I keep feeding myself that fuel, and you and I continue to sort of, keep dumping into that community pool, let's say, to say, this is positive energy. We all need it. Because the thing about the amputee community, I find it in a lot of ways, it's kind of this, although it's everywhere, it's kind of this small, kind of focused kind of group of people that really realize, this is a powerful sort of journey we're all on right now. And as long as everyone's kind of, planting their little seedlings everywhere, man, it's just great to watch things germinate, and how we're breaking these barriers, these stigmas about amputees,
Yeah.
So, I so appreciate what you say when you go, well, I never met an amputee. I didn't really know like what that's all about. Man, I was in the same
Yeah.
camp. I'm like, first thing that pops into my head, I'm like, well, what's that look like? What's this going to be, or how are people going to perceive me? Or,
Yeah.
there's all these little nuance and stigmas. And, I definitely got on the my life is over train, but it was
Yeah.
momentary. I mean, it was just a moment. It was, once I started tapping into energies like yourself and other people, all of that just went away. I mean, it was gone. And, for you to continue doing what you're doing, I so appreciate it. I do want to take a quick break. We're going to do a segment that we do on every episode that's called Amps You Should Know. We're going to be right back with Jamie Gane. Don't go away. Hey everyone, today on Amps You Should Know, I want to talk about Roman Lakin. Roman is a 36-year-old bilateral above-the-knee amputee. He's been an amputee for 4 years. As difficult as this is for me to say, Roman became an amputee when he was run over by a subway train in New York City. Roman is just an incredibly remarkable guy. I actually noticed Roman online through social media, and noticed a lot of what he was putting out there in terms of content. He's an incredible guy, involved in hand cycling, mono skiing, indoor rock climbing, wheelchair pickleball, softball, wheelchair basketball. He's just an incredibly active amputee. And when I did finally have a chance to speak to him, all I can really say is I've never met a more positive person. He's a pleasure to talk to. Certainly a inspiration to me, and his strength and his wisdom in just being a 4-year amputee. I can't say enough great things about Roman. I really appreciate him sharing his story with me and just everything that he represents in our community. When I asked Roman what inspires him, he said it was just that he simply loves showing people that anything is possible. Roman Lakin, he is definitely an amp you should know. Hey everyone, we're back with Jamie Gane, and we've been talking about his fantastic, extraordinary, unbelievable journey as an amputee. We've only scratched the surface, though. You know, I wanna get into some of the activities that you engage as an adaptive athlete, which, of course, many people like myself are following. Um, you know, when I look at my notes here and I think about all the different disciplines that you've been involved in, I mean, it's a little mind-boggling for me because, you know, the thing I always go to right away is, you know, how on earth does he find the time, you know, to do all of these things? I mean, okay, so you know you've done judo. You're a para-Spartan, obviously, Tough Mudder. Now you're doing paraskiing, aren't you?
Yep, that's right.
Oh man, I mean, and you find the time to do public speaking and private sessions. You're a motivational speaker. Uh, just walk me through before we get into some of the disciplines specifically. Walk me through how you parse all that out and have a life and have you know, I mean, we're all given the same 24 hours in a day, right?
Yeah.
So, um, you know, like when do you sleep? I mean, how do you do it all? I mean, help me understand that a little bit better.
Well, I certainly get my 8 hours. I'll tell you that every
Okay,
night.
that's
I make sure.
reassuring. That's reassuring.
Yeah,
I'm glad you're saying that.
yeah. So, as well as obviously all my sports, I am a full-time secondary school teacher for maths. So I work, full time, but that means that my half-term breaks, my Easter breaks, my summer holidays, I can focus on training, which is fantastic.
Hmm.
So, my average day is getting up about 6:30 in the morning, and then I'm leaving and I'm being at school by 7:15, and that then means that I can get all of my preparation, all of my because obviously being a teacher is really hard and having to prepare work so that when you're
Sure.
in work you have work to do. Um, so I get all of that done sort of first thing in the morning, and then it will literally be sometimes going straight from school on a train to London and doing a speech for a couple of hours, getting back. I recently bought myself a Peloton a couple of months ago.
Oh, really?
So, getting on the Peloton for about an hour or so, and having a dinner and pretty much going to bed. And that's pretty much every day, Monday to Friday. And I always make sure that I allow, whether it's half an hour or an hour with my partner, and we just literally just sit down and watch TV. And yeah, okay, well, we cook dinner together, we spend a lot of time together there. So, I get my sort of interactions there. And then at the weekend it's pretty much event after event most of the time. So from May up until sort of September, October, every single weekend pretty much is booked up with events, races, training, some kind of something else. And then during the summer holidays and all the other holidays, I fit in all of my other stuff. And then I do all my other work. I basically try and make the most out of every minute of the day. So if I'm getting on a train to London, which is about an hour, I try and do some of my work. As well as that, I'm doing a master's master's degree part time.
Of
So I might
course
do
you
some
are.
of my dissertation work,
Yeah.
or write some of my essays, or my reading, or and then I go to university once a week. So I just literally try and make the most out of every minute. And you certainly get used to doing things very efficiently. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm, you know, I am very much naturally a person that needs to be stimulated,
Yep.
and whether that's physically, mentally, I'm definitely a creative, and I very much seek out activity.
Mm.
And I find that when I'm alone and there's official downtime, let's call it,
Mm.
it only and this is crazy, but it only takes about 20 minutes for me to slip into boredom where I'm
Yeah.
thinking like, well, what could I be working on right now, you
Yeah.
know, to kind of get, you know, get my gears going again.
Yeah. Completely.
And the only thing that seems to kind of, you know, put me into that sort of calm state is if for some reason I overeat, and then
Okay.
I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
ah,
Drink
no.
gunner.
Right.
Yeah.
Where that isn't the thing that you really should be doing in order to calm yourself down, you know?
Probably not. No.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, that's a bad habit to get into. Food is fuel. It's not a way to, like, make yourself, lay down on the couch. But I would think all of that planning for you, making sure that there's the work, life, training, time with your partner, family time, all of that is probably a very complex recipe. Um,
Mm,
but obviously with like anything else, I think that, you do, you just strive to be the best at it and just to do it very well and live your fullest life and try to get as much as you can out of every moment. I was
yeah.
actually sick for a number of years. And, that time in my life, I sort of lived in I guess you'd call it almost like a zombie-like state where
Mm,
everything is very fuzzy. And I know that you were medicated at one time in your life as well.
yeah.
So you might be able to relate to that feeling of things just aren't really clear. Your
Yeah.
lens is just very fuzzy all the time, where you don't
Yeah.
really feel like whatever's happening right now is really even happening to you. You're just sort of in this space. And the way I think of my life now, in that I am so clear, I am so focused, and friends that, saw me through my toughest times are like, you're like a completely different person now. Like, we don't even know who you
Yeah.
are. And
Mm,
that to me is such a beautiful compliment, because trying to get as much out of every moment for me, and you might agree with this, I think you probably do, that's when you feel like you're really living,
yeah.
when you're engaging life. Wouldn't you agree
Mm,
with that?
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think in the last couple of years, I've really I was very much, I have to be the best at everything,
Hmm.
be the best that I can be at everything. And I think I've actually been willing to accept that, you know what, some stuff's it's gonna take a back seat, and priorities are gonna change all the time. And I've been doing it the last year or so.
Hmm.
I used to try and post on social media every single day, and now, there's sometimes a week where I don't do anything. And I think what I try and do is come across on my social media, and come across as a person that actually, you know what, like, yeah, I do these great things. I'm ranked number 2 in the world for this. I'm ranked number 1 in the world for this. But actually, I have a life.
Hmm.
Not everything is perfect, and I'm going to be the best that I can be, and whatever that means at that time for that particular thing, I'm just going to accept that. And different people relax and do different things at different ways. For me, I could quite easily start playing the piano and lose myself in it for an hour.
You're a
But I see
musician.
that
You're a
as,
musician, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you're like cross discipline. Like, you play a couple different instruments, don't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Of course you
Yeah.
do. I'm a I,
Why not?
I'm a
Why not?
drummer. I only know how to
Oh,
hit.
really?
I know only know how to hit things with sticks. Um,
Okay, that's fine.
so
We'll take you. We'll take you on board. That's fine.
no, but I really appreciate you saying that, because sometimes, and I don't know if you've ever directly, hopefully not, experienced this. Sometimes there can be this resentment in the amputee community of high functioning amputees.
Yeah.
And I find this a little bizarre, um,
Mm,
only because uh, I only draw positive feelings from people that are living their best life, whatever that is. When I
yeah.
when I see someone that is in a wheelchair and they're playing basketball, and they're playing pickleball or soccer from a wheelchair, and
Mm,
they're doing it well. I mean, they're high performers in that chair. I'm like, damn, that's awesome. Like, good for
Yeah.
you. If that's your channel, if that's your groove, go for it. Be
Hmm.
be awesome at it. And there is no comparing of, well, you have to get to this stage or that stage, or just to be able to celebrate each other for those differences, I think is so important. And for you to be
Yeah.
able to step away, from something like social media, and leave us all a little hungry for your next post
Yeah.
isn't the worst thing to do, because um sometimes, piquing everyone's curiosity about what's going on, it can actually work to your advantage, where
Mm.
you're not just constantly broadcasting, every meal, every thought, everything that you're doing, but just giving your followers, a general idea of what's going on with you, humanizing yourself in that space of, hey,
Yeah.
I'd love to be part of the Marvel universe, but I am not a superhero.
Yeah.
I'm just a person. I have a life,
Mm.
I have a job, and it's funny, as this podcast tends to get more and more popular, I'm getting inundated with all these messages, and I'm like, you guys got to understand something. I got a full-time job. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't what I do full time. I'm
Yeah.
I'm volunteering my time to play my role in all of this, to
Mm.
bring these stories out in a conversational kind of way, so that people can see how normal all of this is, and really be able to not only be inspired, but see this as more of a human interest thing, in that, there is such a thing as the amputee lifestyle, and it's very normal. We we
Mm.
we look a little different maybe, but it's all just normal stuff going on. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the judo competitions, because
Yeah.
I find some of that video that I've watched, it, I mean, I'm not going to drop an F bomb, but it's extraordinary. I mean, it's like
Thank you.
effing extraordinary. When I see you competing, performing at that level, and you're not wearing a prosthesis.
No.
I mean, that's for me. Again, going back to the what can I do, what can I not do? I definitely can't do that. But I am so inspired when I see those videos, um, of you competing, with these able-bodied individuals. How did all of that start? What brought you to that particular arena?
Yeah, well, I did judo actually from a really young age.
Hmm.
So my brother did judo. My brother's 4 years older than me. My brother did it, and I started at age 4, just literally trying to push people over,
Yeah.
basically, until I was in my wheelchair at the age of 9. And then when I had my amputation, I was like, you know what, that thing that I loved as a kid, let's give it a go. Why not? So I just turned up at my local judo club. I started right back from white belt, and I literally turned up and they said, we have no idea what to do with you. We'll just chuck you on a mat and see what
We
happens.
don't know what to do with
So
you. I love that.
no, exactly.
So
You're
you
like,
show
what?
up and they look at you like, Now, okay, now what do we do?"
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And then I found out that there was this. It's changed now, but it used to be called special needs judo, and that was the only avenue available for anybody with any kind of disability.
Right.
So I thought, hey, there's this platform. I don't really agree with the special needs name, but I'll go anyway. So I went to the British Special Needs
Sure.
Championship, and again I turned up, and they were like, "We don't know what to do with you." I was like, "Okay." that's fine. You know, they said, right, you can't compete with your leg on. You have to take your leg off. And then you're going to compete in these categories. We're going to look at your, you know, you look pretty strong. You look pretty fit. We'll just put you in the most able-bodied category. Why not? That seems fair.
Yeah.
And then I came back with that first competition with a silver medal.
Wow.
So, you know, and I think I remember, obviously you're in the mode, you're on the mat, you've got an opponent in front of you, and you're trying to focus on that. But while you're doing that, you know, you've got a crowd of people who've never seen a lower limb amputee do judo before. So there's like all these faces watching you,
Well,
and you're like, I
well,
feel
here's
like
the
I'm
thing.
representing the whole
Well,
amputee
yeah,
community here.
here's the thing, and I can only corroborate that version
Yeah.
because I'm an amputee, and when I see you in that space, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, so like all these people, you know, and then I think it was my first match. I like did a really nice throw, and everyone was like, "Whoa!" You know. And then they came to the second match, and even more eyes were on me. I was like, "Okay, no pressure."
Yeah, right.
And then there was a couple of guys who were over from the Netherlands. I don't know why they were at the British Championships, but anyway. And the coach there said, "Hey, you know, you should come and compete in the Netherlands. We have more competitions." So, you know, from there I was asked to represent Great Britain and go over. And then I was asked to compete at the World Judo Games, which is the highest competition that you can get to. Because obviously the Paralympics, unfortunately, isn't an avenue for amputees. So again, similar story. Turned up, they said, "We don't know what to do with you, so no leg," and here we go. Yeah, so it was good fun.
No, it's I mean, for me, again, it's just inspirational and just seeing you in that space and doing what you do with such confidence and grace and just, you know, it's such a it's such a piece of sort of amputee history, I guess is the way to put it.
Mm.
It's in a way, it's I look at it, I always look at things, you know, in that focused way, but then I sort of step back and I look at the bigger picture and I see those moments very much as like your legacy. You know, when
Mm.
I see you in Tough Mudder, when I see you in these judo competitions, um, talk to me about what happened in the Netherlands recently. Let's talk about that, the Spartan
Oh,
competitions.
for my Spartan.
Yeah.
Oh, that was amazing. I absolutely loved that. So, you know, up until this point, my Tough Mudder competitions, they weren't really competitions. You know, it was just finishing. But then I also did the obstacle European Championships and the obstacle World Championships. And again, I was competing against able-bodied people. And then at the World Judo Games, again, I was competing against physically able-bodied people because they had some kind of mild learning difficulty. And but there was this opportunity to go to a Spartan and obstacle race with other para athletes,
Yeah.
and they were actually going to classify us as lower limb impairments, upper limb, and then wheelchair athletes. So, you know, as part of my surgeries up until my amputation, you know, I have a spinal cord injury as well, so I have no feeling below my waist. But I was like, okay, even if I'm against another amputee, I really don't care. It's kind of level-ish, so let's go for it. So it was with another athlete that I competed with in Las Vegas as part of a team competition, but this was an individual based competition. So it was all organized and it literally was the most amazing weekend. You know, I remember going home thinking, I don't want to come home. I just want to do it all over again. So it was two competitions, one that was just completion really, and then an actual competition.
Yeah.
So the completion one was an overnight sprint, so it was only a 5K, you know, pitch black with head torches on and little Christmas lights stuck to you. And it was just a chance to get to know the other athletes from a sort of competition basis to have an understanding of how people were going to approach it. You know,
Yeah.
am I going to be near the back? Am I going to be near the front? I've got absolutely no idea. And then the Sunday morning was a super. So it was 10 kilometers,
Mm.
just go as fast as you can. And that was just amazing. I mean, I didn't realize they were going to rank overall. So the overall adaptive athletes, with any impairment. And then they also had a lower limb amputee or a lower limb impairment one, and the different kind of rankings for each one.
Yeah.
But it was just amazing, you know, being able to run with other adaptive athletes and just, you know, get that sense of oh, there's someone, you know, like half a mile behind me, you know, I'm going to speed up a bit, or, you know, keeping that going. Because it's very easy when you're racing and it's not a competition or it's not on a level playing field. It's very easy to just go, you know, what's the point in pushing myself? Because I'm not going to get any further. I'm not going to get any faster. I'm just going to be better than somebody who's physically better than me anyway, you
Right.
know. And while I don't often think like that, it can kind of feel like that sometimes.
Sure.
So it was actually really nice to go into a race thinking, you know what, I could win this. I could come home with a medal, and I'm very fortunate that I did.
Yeah, and you came home with which medal?
With gold.
Of course you did.
Yeah, it was interesting actually.
You're so modest. You're so modest. I have to like pull that out of you. You're like, yeah, I came home with a medal. I'm like, and you. See, but that's what I love about you. You're like, well, I'm not going to boast, but hey, I competed and I won. You know, so when I saw some of those images, obviously I've seen some of the video. It's such a camaraderie, and there's this energy, this buzz, you know, amongst all the athletes, and it's got to be just, I would think, like transformative in a way for yourself.
Yeah, and it's really motivating, to be honest, because, you know, we're hoping to do another European Championships in October with very similar athletes, and you know that's kind of like, it's going to be a level playing field ish, and it's an opportunity to really get another medal. So I'm really going to go for it, and I'm really going to train hard for
Good.
it, and that's kind of my plan.
No, I'm
And it's
looking
interesting
forward
because
to it.
the night sprint that was just completion, we did in about an hour and 40 minutes or
Hmm.
something. Because we were all as a team, you know, and then the next day when I was competing, I did double the distance in like an hour and a half or something because, you know, we were actually racing. It was amazing.
You weren't
Yeah.
just cruising like the night before, you know.
Oh, it was great. It was wonderful. You know, it was very typical obstacle racing. You know, you get over a wall and you help someone else, and then you wait for everybody, and you're just there chatting, and then
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
go off to the next one.
No, it's in
It's
some
great.
ways it has a social component, which I think is probably wonderful, you know, to be able to
Yeah.
exchange ideas and things like that. So the thing I want to talk about, you know, a little bit, if you can give us some of your tips and tricks. So when someone looks at a you know, an adaptive athlete like yourself, and they see some of the things that you're doing, um, and let's say they're at ground zero,
Yeah.
brand new amputee, may have had an active lifestyle before amputation, may not, but they're wanting to get into those spaces. They're wanting to get into those competitive spaces, pushing themselves, you know, to those limits. Um, what would you say to someone that just comes to you and says, you know, how do you do it, Jamie? Like, how do you do it? Like, what can you tell me? Like, what words of wisdom can you give me? Not even not just from a spiritual standpoint of the, you just got to go for it, but also, well, how do you manage all of that with your limb, and you know, you know, what are those recovery times like? I mean, can you get into some of those details for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the wonderful thing about adaptive sports and amputees in general is I feel like, anyway, that the people that put themselves out there are out there because they're willing to be contacted, you know, and I don't put my page up because I don't want anyone to contact me. I love it when I get messages of help and being able to direct people. So when it comes to, you know, sport, if someone said, I really want to get into wheelchair basketball, for example, you know, I can almost guarantee that by getting in touch with wheelchair basketball, they'll have the resources, they'll have people there to be able to help. So, you know, if you are an individual that's interested in anything, just reach out to people, and the more contacts you can make, you know, there'll always be, hey, I know someone in that area who can help you, or I'll go for a run with you. People are always willing to help and being open to help.
Yeah.
I think when people are a new amputee, there's that sense of, either people think I'm not able to do anything, I need a lot of help, or people go the other side of, no, I'm really proud and I need to get through it myself. And I think being able to settle in whatever state you're in and accept help is really, really important. In terms of practically, in terms of legs, everybody's system is very, very different wherever you live. But there are some amazing organizations out there that can help you. The Challenging Athletes Foundation, from your local prosthetic centers to anybody really, any sponsor that's willing to help. My recommendation is go out there, start doing whatever you want to do, and then when you start doing it, just show people what you're able to do.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. I've got my blade is sponsored and my walking leg is sponsored, and that's purely because I paid for my first leg through the clinic, and then like 2 weeks later, I was deadlifting all sorts of weights, and I was sending them videos and saying, "Hey, this is what I can do. Can you now support me?" And they said, "Oh, wow! If you can do that with this, here's this great product that you can use."
Oh yeah.
Be open to sharing your story. Be open to helping other people, to receiving support, and actually just put yourself out there because people are willing to help as
That
much as
is
possible.
fantastic advice, because sometimes I will get asked this question as if I have the answers. And, you
Mm,
know, I always go back to my business mind, which is build your network, start
yeah,
building your network, reach out to as many people who will listen. You will be
yeah,
amazed at how many different people, whether that's clinicians, practitioners, other amputees, therapists, prosthetic companies, you would be amazed at how many people are willing to help. And if you're transparent and you say, these are my goals, this is where I'm trying to go, this is what I'm trying to do, it's phenomenal what starts to happen for you. And I encourage that. And I appreciate you saying that because that encouragement is the gateway, okay, to getting forward, to getting to where we want to go. And, I had a young mother contact me. Her autistic son was in a lawnmower accident and became a below the knee in one leg and lost a partial foot on the other leg. And she was in a space of, now what do I do? I am starting from zero. I had a son who has special needs to begin with. And now I have a whole new challenge ahead of me. So again, my business mind goes right to, let's start connecting the dots. Who can I put you in contact with? Where can I point you towards that's going to get
yeah,
you everything, all the resources, all the train up, all the education that you need so that your son can live an incredible life and do amazing things with his life. Start positioning yourself with the right people and everything else will fall into place. I know you do motivational speaking as well. Um how do you I had a curiosity, how do you integrate your personal story, let's say with someone who is not an amputee, they're struggling with something completely unrelated, to your particular journey. What does that look like for you? How do you develop practices in that way?
well, I think if someone's going through something that's very different to you, yes, it's probably a different situation. However, the feelings, the thoughts, the intentions can all still be pretty much the same. So when you relate to somebody, you don't have to say, I've been in this particular situation, but you can say, I was in this situation and it made me feel like this, which I imagine is also how it makes you feel. And therefore, we can get out of it by, this is how I did it. And this is the mindset. When it comes to sort of my motivational speeches, it's interesting because I don't necessarily think that I'm a particularly motivating person. I think I'm just someone who's just getting on with my life. And the fact that people like my story is pretty cool. And people will very kindly pay for that story to be told. And it's very interesting when people say to me, you know, oh, you're so inspiring or you're so motivating. But I'm like, I'm just a guy who's just living my life. So, you know, when I get questions like this, I sometimes don't really know how to answer, because actually I feel like there's a lot of aspects in my story that are really relatable for whatever reason that is. And when people are struggling and I try and help them to get out of that, it's finding what is the root of this problem, what is the feeling, or what is the response as a result of that. Have I felt something similar? And this is how I've kind of overcome it. So it's yeah, there's always something to relate to people, even if they haven't been through your
No,
same
and I
situation.
totally agree with that as well. You know, we're all having this human experience, and there's so
Yeah,
many similarities in that regard. You know, we haven't even scratched the surface here with you. And, you know, of course I'm looking at my watch and I know we're already an hour in. So, of course, I want to thank you wholeheartedly for what you represent in the amputee community. I want to also thank you personally, because so much of my own success in navigating this tricky path has been in finding inspiration through people like yourself. And I'm so excited because I know that we're going to revisit this conversation, and I'm sure it'll be many medals from now. And, you know, just please, you know, don't be a stranger. And, you know, just God bless. And I so appreciate everything. You know, you taking the time to be here is kind of a dream come true for me. So, thank you. Thank you so much.
thank you for having
Oh,
me.
no, my absolute pleasure. That's going to wrap it up for us. My name is Rick Bontkowski. This is the Amped Up to 11 podcast. And I want to wish everyone health and happiness. We'll see you next time.